This screencast is to support this lesson on animal rights with a language focus of verb idioms, which can be found in Straightforward Upper Intermediate by Philip Kerr and Kerry Jones, published by Macmillan. Okay, so let's have a look at the lesson and how we can approach it. Okay, so for the lead-in, the book gives you a picture of a fox, and the question is, do you know any stories or legends about foxes? I don't think that's going to generate much discussion among the students. So instead of using that, we could start off with some discussion questions that actually appear at the end of the unit, but we could use them as a lead-in. So you can do this however you like. It says, work in pairs, read the list of activities that animal rights movements campaign against. So you might want to start off with some kind of image of an animal rights protester and elicit what's going on here from the students, just to get them kind of engaged and thinking about the topic. And once they've established what the topic is, you could give them some of these discussion questions to talk about for, between 5 and 7 minutes. Testing cosmetics, testing new drugs and vaccines on live animals, farming them to make fur coats. You could use some images, but, try not to make them too distressing, obviously. I think this would be a nice way to lead in to the topic and find out what the students know already about it. Okay, next, students are going to read the newspaper article in exercise 2 and answer the question. So before they read the article, you're going to need to pre-teach some vocabulary that they'll need, some blocking vocabulary. I would suggest protester, clash, pest and petition. You could do it as a matching task. You could show some images, try to elicit the words from the students, see what they know, and do a little bit of work on pronunciation in preparation for the reading task. So this reading text, the article, is about some animal rights protesters getting into a clash at the town hall. So students read the question, what were the two groups of people protesting about? And they read the text fairly quickly and note down their answer, then get them to peer check and give you the answer. If you've got any time at the end of your part, you could ask the students if anyone has ever taken part in any kind of protest and what it was for. Okay, so now that they've done the reading, they're now going to listen to a radio debate between a member of the Residents' Association and a member of the Urban Fox Lovers movement. Again, we want to pre-teach any vocabulary that's going to stop the students from being able to complete the task. So looking through the audio script in the teacher's notes, I can see that there are a few words that I think would be useful to pre-teach before they listen. I would suggest cull, nuisance, domestic versus wild animals, to bury, and hutch, as in rabbit hutch. Try to find ways to elicit them, either through pictures, giving a description perhaps with a gapped word that they need to fill in, or the first letter of the word. Just try to elicit the vocabulary and drill any tricky sounding words. Cull is quite challenging, the sound. Nuisance, there's that intrusive y sound, nuisance. And I would say bury as well, because it doesn't look like it sounds. Now you're going to give the students time to read the 4 questions that they're going to answer when they listen to the radio debate. So just give them a minute or so to read them in silence, and then you can play the audio. To play the audio through Teams, you need to click on the audio file you've been sent and click on the share screen option within Teams, and on the bottom left of your screen you'll see turn audio on or something to that effect. So you need to click on that so that all students can hear the audio. To make sure the students are clear on what they need to do, I would play the audio up to the point where they can find the answer to the first question and then pause it. And then very quickly ask the students to talk together and tell each other the answer to number 1. Nominate, get the answer, write the answer down when somebody gives you the correct answer, and say, now I'm going to play the audio all the way through and you can answer questions 2, 3 and 4. Play the audio all the way through without stopping, and students will write down the answers to the questions while they listen. Once they've listened, play it again and allow the students to fill in any of the information they didn't get at the first listen. Once they've listened for the second time, they can check with their peers and you can nominate for answers. Now moving on to exercise 4, they're going to listen to the same radio debate and answer some different questions. Follow the same procedure as exercise 3, give them time to look through the words and phrases and then listen through the audio twice and write down the answers. Pair check and feedback. If you've got time at the end, you can do the discussion questions in number 5. Next, we're going to move on to the language focus of the lesson, which is the vocabulary verb idioms. So all of these verb idioms that we're going to be looking at have come up in the audio, in the listening that the students have just done. So we've got add up, butt in, clear up, draw a line, face and miss the point. They're idiomatic expressions, which means they can't be translated literally. And students love to learn these, but they find them quite challenging. So, exercise 1, replace the phrases in italics with verb idioms from the box. So they've got 6 sentences and they need to replace explain, for example, in number 1, which you could do together, with one of the idioms. Okay, so that would be clear up. Okay, so once they've done that as an example, let them just work. You can either set this as an individual activity that they do alone to start off with and then check together, or you can encourage them to work together from the outset and discuss what they think the replacement for each of the phrases is. Monitor this carefully, listen out for anything they're finding relatively easy or any of the phrases that they are really struggling with, because you can check those in more depth in feedback. Now, to check the answers in context, the book says to check their answers in the audio script on page 151. So the audio script is actually in your teacher's notes. It's a bit too dense to put on a slide, I feel. So I wouldn't do that. I would just check it with them and use lots of concept checking questions to really make sure that they've grasped the meaning of these words and phrases, okay? You also want to focus on idioms such as clear up, which is a separable phrasal verb. So I could say, could I just clear up one thing before we start? Equally, I could say, could I just clear one thing up before we start? So it can either go before the noun or around the noun. That's the only one in this set of idioms that is separable. And then do some drilling, some focusing on pronunciation. And I would remove the sentences once you've checked the meaning, checked the form, then remove the sentences from the slide, show them a blank slide, and just get them to focus on you while you drill these 6 sentences. Okay, so drilling the language in context with the verb idioms in each sentence. So could I just clear up one thing before we start? Could I just clear up one thing? You miss the point completely. You miss the point completely. Okay, so you could just drill the clause, the part of the sentence with the phrase in it, so it's not too long. And get the students to think about where the stress is in the sentence, okay? In English, stress is on the important content words of the sentence, so it's usually on the verb and the noun. So in number 1, could I just clear up one thing? That would be on clear and up, because it's a phrasal verb and they go together. In number 2, you miss the point completely. Miss and point, the verb and the noun, okay? So work on that and get the students working on it too. Now they'll be ready for some practice, so they can do exercise 2, the gap fill, where they have to put the correct verb idiom into the sentence. Do an example and let them work alone or together. If they work alone, they need to pair check and get the answers at the end and make sure they have visual answers during feedback. Have some concept checking questions ready to check any that they're still struggling with in terms of meaning, and do any drilling if necessary at this stage. If you've got time, you could ask them the question, do you know anyone who fits the descriptions above? Tell us about them. Okay, finally, it's time for some freer practice. So the aim of this part of the lesson is to get the students using these verb idioms in a fluency-based activity, okay, a discussion task. So let's have a look at it. It says work in pairs. Take it in turns to react to the statements below and use the phrases from exercise 1, i.e. the verb idioms. So there's 6 statements here and they're all quite provocative, and I would imagine, you know, the students would have some quite strong opinions about some of them. Always good for a discussion. So I'd have number 1 up on my slide, get the students to have a look at it and say to them, what do you think about this statement? I'm going to give you 2 or 3 minutes to write down your thoughts about this statement, and you must write at least 2 reasons to support your opinion. Once they've had that time, you can get them talking together and explaining their reasons for their opinions. While they're discussing these opinions, remember to encourage them to use the verb idioms. So have those visible on the slide and tell them, you know, I'm going to be listening while you're discussing to how much you are using these different verb idioms. Now that you've done the example together, you can set them the other statements 2 to 6. You can give them, I'd say, between 6 and 8 minutes to make some notes about whether they agree or disagree with each statement, and note down 2 reasons to support their opinion for each one. And then you can get them talking together. Don't forget to monitor while they talk together and step back. Allow them to talk. Just prompt them gently if there's a lot of silence going on. Hopefully they'll have lots of ideas that they're eager to share. Make some notes on good examples and incorrect examples of the verb idioms that they're using. And you can use those later after you've done some general feedback on ideas at the end of their discussion to ask the students to correct the incorrect sentences. Please note, we're not including the 2 activities you can see here in this lesson.